So I hear your distress, and so I hope that we can tackle who is undoubtedly a very difficult writer, an important writer, but certainly a challenging writer in terms of his various ideas that oftentimes, as you pointed out earlier, do conflict. So we're going to be taking a look at Emerson today. I hear the distress in terms of like understanding the different interpretations of his use of the word education. And so what we're going to try to do today is we're going to try to get at the heart of what he's arguing and see whether or not we can make sense of the different arguments that he's making and how we can look at things in various different, through different lenses and through different perspectives. Just to take a step back and think about the idea of the philosophy that he's coming from and the ideas that he's trying to espouse and the history of the movement that he was part of. The Transcendental movement, I was thinking about a way of like how I could graphically or like physically show it, and the yin yang was the best that I could do. So apologies for appropriating the Asian symbol for a very Western movement, but like it's probably about as good as I could do, and it's a very, very deep symbol. So I hope it's of use to you. Fundamentally, Transcendentalism saw this, for lack of a better word, transcendent quality of human experience. That there's something glorious, special, spiritual, and beyond mere like material about being a human being, about being part of nature, about being part of a civilization. And so there's this interconnection between nature, which is represented as the black part of the sphere, civilization as the white part of the sphere, the individual as this thing that can kind of go between nature and civilization, and then all of this is part of this overall relationship to this idea, this spirit, this force, this thing, God. So far, what are your thoughts on just that idea? Just to see kind of where you fall in terms of the way that you're thinking about this.
Like you need a certain amount of nature and a certain amount of civilization, and like that combination is really important. And I don't know if maybe you chose the yin yang because of this, but because in the black part there's one white circle, and in the white part there's one black circle. I think it's like there's always going to be some civilization that's involved in nature, and there's always going to be nature that's involved in civilization. And like as an individual, like it's really important to balance like the amount of how much you're involved in nature and how much you're involved in civilization. That's from that. Very transcendental. Like they would absolutely say one must actually probably have way too much of this. They would argue we're way too much into this part, and so we do need to move further into this natural sphere. Emerson makes this argument, and we'll see that in his journals today, that there's I'm going to get the quote wrong, but there's more wisdom in a man who goes his own way than in all the books, something along those lines. It's one of the early quotes from the journal. And we see it also in the actions of Thoreau as he goes out to Waldo Pond, which had its civilization, had its markers of civilization for sure, but it was also a very natural environment. And so it was the idea of trying to balance these various forces and not to over-civilize oneself and therefore constrain the individual or go too much into nature, although perhaps the transcendentalists would say that it's kind of impossible to go too much into nature. But there's this fundamental relationship in transcendentalism between God, nature, civilization, and the individual. They're all linked, and there's something special and beyond mere like material stuff about all of those things. There's something spiritual and deep and resonant and personal, psychic maybe, about all of those ideas. And so what they're trying to get at is, what is that special, spiritual, transcendent truth that we can maybe achieve if we just take an observation of our thoughts and our reactions and our ideas all the time? And so a lot of what Emerson and Thoreau's works are trying to do is they're trying to, this is a quote from one of my professors, and I don't know if she got it from somewhere else, but I remember because it's such a beautiful choice of words, skim the ephemera of our minds. So she's just like trying to peel away all the different thoughts that you're having in any individual moment to see kind of where you fall in this relationship between nature and civilization and God, just to try to observe it all the time. And so largely what we have in the journals of Emerson and Thoreau is this constant observation of this is where I am in any given point and period of time. So far so good? Questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question for the God portion. Because I get the nature and individual and the civilization, how it represents.
Yes.
But then maybe God could be related to the transcendentalist ideas, but then I'm not so sure, because to me, I don't know, it's a little vague. So I'm not so sure how it kind of connects.
Boy, you're asking me how God relates to nature and civilization and the individual?
No, but then because I'm kind of relating to Emerson's point of view.
Yes.
Because I didn't really think that it kind of relates to God. So I was just wondering how that came from.
Okay. I think we'll get there when we look at, let's see, which paragraph would that be? This is on page 91, where he really starts getting into kind of the importance of God as this kind of mover and force within one's psyche. And so we'll get there, but just to briefly answer your question, you see what the paragraph that starts, all writing is by the grace of God? All writing is by the grace of God. People do not deserve to have good writing. They are so pleased with that. In these sentences that you show me, I can find no beauty, for I see death in every clause and every word. There is a fossil or a mummy character which pervades this book. The best sepulchres, the vastest catacombs, Thebes and Cairo, pyramids, are sepulchres to me. I like gardens and nurseries. Give me initiative, spermatic, prophesying, man-making words. Do you see the relationship a little bit in terms of where God fits in with both this man and with this nature idea, spermatic, prophesying, like kind of psychic, spiritual movement that runs through lively writing? Does that make a little bit more sense? God is this transcendent location, this transcendent truth that the transcendentalists are trying to aspire to as they look toward some kind of revelation through introspection and connection with the natural world and the civilized world.
Oh, does that make sense?
Other questions on, so far, the relationship that I'm trying to draw with transcendentalism, God, the individual, nature, and civilization? All right. What we're going to
try to do is we're going through these different paragraphs, is we're gonna go through them slowly, because there's a lot to unpack. Trust me, I know, I've been there. And so, what we're gonna work on is a reading strategy called dialectic or counterpoint. Any of you debate? Like to debate? Like to debate? Like to debate? Good. Are any of you familiar with either of these ideas of dialectic or counterpoint? Heard them before? All good? So the idea is that when you start out with what we call a thesis or a starting point, your starting argument, there's always a counter argument, right? There's always the refutation. There's always the other way that you could look at it. And so what a dialectic is it's taking that thesis, it's taking that antithesis or antithesis, and you're kind of smashing them together to come up with something new. This is largely how scientists, philosophers, they try to come up with new ideas. So it's like, okay, you have your idea, you have your idea. Let's test all these ideas together and see if we can come to some better understanding, some greater understanding of what's really going on. Yes, ma'am.
So like for a dialectic, it's basically when you kind of combine 2 points that contradict each other but that argue about the same thing with different perspectives into one.
Yes. Yeah, that's a dialectic. It's a constant, ongoing dialogue between 2, sometimes opposite, sometimes different, sometimes somewhat closely related ideas, in order to try to come to some new understanding and some better way to move forward in the world. Can you think of any dialectics that happened in the public sphere in any ways?
I have a question. So
Yes, ma'am.
2 different things come together and create something totally
Yes. Yep. It was originally conceived and put to the best explanation by a philosopher named Hegel. It's called Hegel's Dialectic. Okay. Not super important for this particular context, but I kind of think of it as this like constantly like occurring loop that happens where you have a starting point, a thesis, you have an antithesis, they smash together, and so you have then you have a synthesis of those new ideas, and that keeps happening. So now the synthesis becomes the new thesis. There's another antithesis, and it keeps occurring and occurring and occurring, and hopefully there's development that emerges out of that. So where do we see dialectics? Man.
I can't really specifically think of what, but then like I think laws in general, because a lot of people, like the laws apply to like different people and like in different places. And so when there are like 2 different like groups of people like argue about certain like inequalities and stuff, then the government establishes specific law that covers like those issues and
Beautiful.
creates something that's new.
Beautiful. That's why we have courts. That's literally a dialectic. 2 sides arguing about an interpretation of a law in order to come to a new conclusion about whether or not this person is innocent or guilty, or what we should do in this instance or that instance, etc. Right? Laws are a perfect example of a dialectic.
Like in psychology,
Mm-hmm.
there's always theories like about like many different scientists, and sometimes like like the biggest one about nature versus nurture. And through like that dialectic,
It is
they
absolutely.
always come up with new solutions like maybe it's in the middle or like maybe.
Absolutely, that's a great one. That's an ongoing conversation, an ongoing dialogue between various sides in order to understand what's the role of different factors in determining who you are and what kind of person you are. Yeah, absolutely. And this one.
I wanted to say that, but I didn't know how to explain. Even though, like, I guess, like in American politics, you see Republican and Democratic, and like I recently learned that at the base of it, they kind of have the same principles, but over time, it's become something where they're completely differentiated.
Yeah.
And I think like a really good example would be like during the, what is it called? Like when the candidates get up and they're given a question and they talk about that question for like
A debate.
Yeah, that was called debate.
But I
I didn't know that.
visualize
But I think that's where you can see a lot of dialectic, because like an example might be like, Bernie Sanders might be making a point, but then someone else throws in a counterpoint, and then he has to counter that. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Politics, and you're right to kind of stumble over the idea of whether or not this is actually a debate or not, because they're not formal debates in the way that you would see, let's say, like in a law scenario, or even like in a debate club, where you have very structured ways of responding to different points and counterpoints, etc. This is more like 60 seconds. What's your take on immigration? Go. Like, it's not really a debate. It's more like it's something else. It's something else. But politics is a conversation about different sides trying to come to a better understanding about how to govern a country or a series of countries. Right? So dialectics are all around us. Religious dialectics, political dialectics, legal dialectics, social dialectics, right? How you should continue to move through the world. You're made of dialectics. Your desires to either stay in this class and listen, or go down to center point because you're hungry and you want to get a bite to eat, that's an ongoing conversation in your psyche, I am sure, that's raging right at this moment. And not to like look too much into you. Right, but yes, they're all around us. But and so they make their way into writing all the time. And what we're going to try to do as we're looking at Emerson today is we're going to try to form these into dialectics. We're going to try to take different points that he may make and that we may agree with, and what we're going to try to do is we're going to challenge ourselves to switch it up. And if you strongly agree with what he has to say, I want you to challenge yourself, and I want you to take the opposite stance. Does that make sense? There are many of these that I very strongly agree with. I'm going to try and disagree with them. To force myself to argue the negative or argue the positive when I might think the negative, in order to try to strengthen my ability to argue and to understand things. Does that make sense so far? So what I'm going to do is we'll read one out. I'll ask, okay, who agrees with this? And how strongly do you agree with it? Let's say a 5 is like, I couldn't agree with it more. And a 0 is I couldn't disagree with it more. Right? And depending on where you are on the spectrum, I'm going to ask you to try to flip it and see if you can argue the negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the idea is that if you can understand the opposite side, you can really understand the side that you agree with. Right? Okay,
Wow.
let's try it. A little exercise here. You don't have to get up and move, but we're just going to see what we can do in terms of making the arguments. We'll start with the first one here. I like to have a man's knowledge comprehend more than one class of topics, one row of shelves. I like a man who likes to see a fine barn as well as a good tragedy. Just as a knee-jerk reaction, 5 if you very much agree, fist if you very much disagree, 3 if you're somewhere in the middle. Shores. I would give myself a 5 on this one. So let's flip it around. Let's disagree.
This is hard.
But this is
Yeah.
not.
It's fun, yeah.
Let's try it. What can you do?
It's.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go into it. I
please.
think it's like instead of like knowing like only a little bit of a lot of things, I think it's better to know so much like really well of one thing.
Mhm.
Like I think that's more appealing. Like I would like a man that really knows everything of one specific topic rather than knowing only like the shallow parts of many different subjects or topics.
Nice. Before I come to you, can you find an example? Can you cite an example?
Like in like let's say like skill wise, it's not really useful if you only know the basics of so many different like activities. But if you master one activity like a professional, then like you could use that well in life.
Beautiful. Example?
A doctor mastering his surgical skill. Oh, sure. Okay, Mr. David.
You don't have to use me.
Right here.
like yeah. Let's say for you, if you knew how to maybe, and you also knew how to maybe just cook rice, or like you just knew how to open the door. That's not really useful. But if you knew to the T, like to understand English, like literature, like that's gotten you far in life. You have a job, you can make money out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Good example. Thanks for the alley-oop over there. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. You wanna jump in and then Kate? Yeah.
Oh, mine's just like going off of Belle's point. It's more likely that your situation is expecting mastery and expertise in one area that you can truly be confident rather than knowing small bits of information from everywhere. Because similar to a job, like if you, let's say you're trying to be a doctor, right? But like, you know, okay, I know how to bake this, and I know how to cook this, and I know how to draw this. I mean, yeah, it's like kind of miscellaneous. You can have those kind of skills, but it's a lot more efficient and effective if you were able to achieve that mastery in your specific needed ability.
Okay. Kate?
Just adding a bit more, I think by knowing like a lot of fields in a very shallow sort of like a level, then it's a little vague sort of for a person, like as she said, like getting a job as well, and also it's not very structurized, I would say. For example, like in a debate, for example, if you have a stance like this, like in the middle, oh, I like to do that, I like to do that, you can't really debate. Like you just have to, you're just always in the middle. You don't really have a specific like point of view. You're not very like identified, I'll say. You're just like vague, always like in the middle.
Man, last thought.
I think it's important to like study in one specific area since like if one person is like good at everything but not as an expert, that person would kind of like struggle to determine their like life, like regard to like jobs or interests. And like the point of like going to university is to like major in one specific study and like go deep into that study. So I think it's important to study in one specific area.
Okay, good. You guys are getting the hang of it and you're punching that Emerson, and I like that. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna throw in one more
little aspect to this exercise. I will do my best to try to take on the opposing stance to whatever stance you all may have, or if there are various different stances that we can try to adopt. If there are some people that agree and some people that disagree, we can try and start this dialectic here. So there may be some people that agree with Emerson and some people that disagree with Emerson. And we're going to try and have that structured conversation. Okay? Remember, we're attacking the ideas, not the people, and we're trying to get to a new understanding. So you did a nice job of trying to get at this idea of a diversity of knowledge versus a specialization of knowledge. I think you did a nice job of teasing that out. Now let's see what we can do about this second point. The religion that is afraid of science dishonors God and commits suicide.
Oh, thank you. Oh.
Yeah. The religion that is afraid of science dishonors God and commits suicide. 5 couldn't more strongly agree. 0 couldn't more strongly disagree. Where do we fall? Wow. In the middle. So we got a couple in the middle. 5 very strongly agree. I very strongly disagree. I don't mean to keep your points, but let's flip it around. I'll take the 5. You all take the 1s.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is gonna be hard
This
for me
is gonna
too.
be hard.
Yeah.
People.
1 is disagree.
What if you're in the middle?
If you're in the middle, see where you would fall based on the arguments that you hear, and if you can make an argument. Right.
Would you agree that necessarily is a third parents? Like it's not doing it's not doing its job like following things.
Oh.
But now we're disagreeing, so yeah, religion. No wait.
Can we go over this quote?
Yeah,
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
I'm kind of confused.
Yeah, now
All
we're
right.
disagreeing. So we're saying it makes sense, like the religion doesn't have to die just because it's afraid of science. We're saying it makes sense that religion is afraid of science.
That it is separate from it.
Yeah.
Oh. So if you disagree, you're saying they're separate from each other, and if you agree, you're saying they have to be connected.
They have to be connected, yeah.
Wait a
Wait,
second.
no. But isn't it saying the religion that is wait.
This quote is different.
It is difficult.
Oh, I thought when it meant that it's afraid, if the religion is afraid of science, I thought it meant because science most times has the power to prove let's say mistakes in common religious teachings and beliefs, and it can disprove a lot of those big parts of religion.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that's what it meant, religion. Religions that are afraid of science and like to say science is wrong is a dead religion because it's not completely putting their trust in God. That's why I said I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it is one interpretation that you can think of, and I think that might be what he is arguing, is that if a religion distances itself from scientific truth, then it, in its way, dishonors this idea of God,
Yeah.
which is, in Emerson's view, interconnected with nature, civilization, the individual, religion. It dishonors this because you just axed out the natural world and the observations of the natural world.
Yeah.
It's not going to be complete. It's not going to be a full picture of the world. It dishonors God and it commits suicide, which is it ruins itself because you've cut off half of yourself and you're not going to be able to continue to move forward. So I'm going to try to argue the affirmative to that.
Yeah.